Greetings. This episode discusses Daniel Boone's blazing of the Wilderness Road and the founding of Boonesborough. In hopes of establishing a 14th British colony, Richard Henderson and several other investors organized a real estate speculation company in the lands west of the Appalachian Mountains. Henderson changed the name of his company twice, first to the Louisa Company and later the Transylvania Company. Richard Henderson lived from April the 20th, 1735 until January the 30th, 1785. The son of Major Samuel Henderson and Elizabeth Henderson, Richard was native to Hanover, Virginia. Henderson moved to Granville County, North Carolina to study law. He would meet Elizabeth Keeling while at Granville County. The couple married on December the 28th, 1763. They would have 10 children. Henderson gained admittance to the bar and opened a practice. The North Carolina Assembly passed the North Carolina Judiciary Act of 1767, appointing Henderson as Superior Court Judge on March the 1st, 1768. He would hold the position until 1773. During 1765 through 1771 Bar of Regulation, Henderson sentenced many convicted tax resistors to prison. Because of this and his status as a member of the gentry, the rebelling regulators targeted him for violence. In 1774, he headed the Treaty of Sycamore Shoals, in which his group of speculators purchased the region that included a vast region from the Cherokee tribe. The region included portions of current central Kentucky and Tennessee. Richard Henderson hired Daniel Boone to blaze a trail and establish a settlement in his proposed 14th colony. Boone, having explored the region, knew both a route through the wilderness and a likely site with a salt lick for settlement. The Appalachian Mountains created a formidable barrier to settlement of the West. Settlers wishing to press west before Boone's Wilderness Road had 4 choices that they could use. 2 were by water, the Ohio River and the Great Lakes. 2 passes through the mountains also provided choices, Pennsylvania's Kittanning Path and the Cumberland Narrows in Maryland. Another potential path through the mountains existed, the path people would call Boone's Trace or the Wilderness Road. These 3 routes presented colonists without any of today's heavy equipment paths through the wilderness that could be traversed by foot or horseback. The trail, like many other pioneer trails, had its beginning as a buffalo trail. Both the Cherokee and the Shawnee used the rude path carved by these huge beasts to travel west, to travel to war or to hunt. The first recorded European to use the trail was a man named Gabriel Arthur. The Cherokee had captured him in 1673. He used portions of the path through the Cumberland Gap during his escape. The next explorer was a man named Dr. Thomas Walker. His expedition entered the Gap on April the 13th, 1750. He got as far as a spot near Barberville, Kentucky. He and the members of his expedition built the first log cabins in Kentucky on April the 28th, 1750. The expedition became discouraged at the rough terrain, inclement weather, wild animals, and adverse conditions and turned back. However, he gave the gap he found its name, Cumberland Gap. Walker also kept a detailed diary of his experiences, which proved to be a treasure trove of information for historians. He also drew a map, presented the Virginia House of Burgesses, which they used to determine Virginia's borders and Indian territories. Joseph Martin had established a settlement he called Martin Station along the proposed route in 1769. Martin had ties to the earlier effort by Dr. Thomas Walker. Rising to an altitude of 1,304 feet, the Gap provides an avenue through the mountains. Buffalo and Indians used the Gap as a means to get through. Buffalo and natives had carved several trails through the Gap. Boone and his company had the task of combining these several trails into one passable road. Boone and a company of around 35 axemen began blazing the trail on March the 10th, 1775. Their starting point was Long Island in Kingsport, Tennessee, which is near the southwest corner of Virginia, just south of its current border with Tennessee along the Holston River. They followed a native route called the Great Warrior's Path north through Moccasin Gap. From there, they crossed the Clinch River and proceeded along Stocks Creek and through Kane's Gap into Powell Valley. Here they reached Joseph Martin Station. The men rested at Martin Stations, about 20 miles from the Gap. From Martin Station, they continued through the Gap. The Cherokee, notwithstanding the treatment of Sycamore Shoals they had signed, still considered Boone's party as invaders. On March 24th, they attacked Boone's party in the early morning hours by slinging tomahawks at the sleeping men. Several of Boone's party died in the attack, but most escaped to hide into the forest until the attackers dispersed. By April the 1st, 1775, Boone's party reached their destination along the Kentucky River and began building a fort. The completion of the Wilderness Road represented a major accomplishment and proved an important key to the settlement of the West, the region that would become Kentucky and later the Northwest Territory. Historians estimate that over 300,000 settlers used the route from its opening until 1775 until 1810, when its importance began to decline. Boone and his company of axemen reached their destination on the Kentucky River after 3 weeks of hard work using axes, hatchets, and saws through almost 200 miles of mountainous terrain. Paid off when the men reached the proposed settlement site. It was a promising site near the river with several springs and a salt lick nearby. As the men emerged from the forest, a herd of almost 200 buffaloes startled them. Many of these men had never seen buffalo, especially such a large herd. Likely drawn by the nearby salt licks, the animals started upon the appearance of the humans, then forded the river and passed away into the west. They called the site Sycamore Hollow because of the grove of sycamore trees that grew along nearby Otter's Creek.
This episode discusses Daniel Boone's
River.
blazing of the Wilderness Road and the founding of fresh water, and hopes of establishing a 14th British colony. Richard Henderson and several other investors organized a real estate speculation company in the lands west of the Appalachian Mountains. Henderson changed the name of his company twice. Needed salt first served food. Salt licks and later all over the Midwest. However, Richard Henderson lived from April the 20th, the licks attract bison, deer, and other animals, 30th, taking the minerals they contain. The son of Major Samuel Henderson cutting trees, Elizabeth Henderson. Richard was named the site over Virginia, and the town that grew up became Granville County by summer 1775. He would meet Elizabeth have about 26 cabins. Rude cabins, couple married on December the 28th, 1763. The chimneys were constructed from sticks and children. They were constant fire hazard to practice. If a fire did start, the Assembly passed the North Carolina Judiciary Act of 1767, appointing Henderson as settlement site at a restored Fort Boonesborough State Park. You can see the reconstructed fort at that place. For more information, you can contact Fort Boonesborough State Park, 4375 Boonesborough Road, Richmond, Kentucky, 40475. You can call 859-527-3131. And you could find it on the Kentucky State Parks website. The next episode relates the birth and tale of Johnny Appleseed. Find out more about Indiana history by purchasing the book Indiana's Timeless Tales, Prehistory to 1781. The book includes the early history of Indiana from the time glaciers melted until the final days of the Revolutionary War. The book includes sketches of the native tribes that inhabited the state, as well as French outposts established during colonial times. You can find it on my website, www.mossyfeetbooks. There are links to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Google Play, and other online booksellers. Purchase the book in ebook or softbound versions. An audiobook version is available on Google Play. Residents of southeastern Indiana can find my books at the Walnut Street Variety Store on George Street in Batesville. At the conclusion of this series, I will compile the episodes into an audiobook. The audiobook will be available on Audible, Amazon, Apple, Barnes & Noble, as well as many other audiobook sellers. You can also order these books directly from me, the author, on the webpage. If you wish me to sign the book, just send me an email to mossyfeetbooks@gmail.com requesting assigned books and instructions on how you want me to address it. Note, if you send me an email, I will add you to my contact list. Readers on the list will receive an email from me announcing when I publish a new book. If you do not want me to add you to the list, tell me and I will not add you. Listeners of this podcast that want an email notification of my new releases can just send me an email requesting addition to the list. You can choose to have your name removed at any time. If you browse the website, you find dozens of sample chapters, one for each of my books. I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and thank you for listening.